What is happening? What is going on? Hi everyone, my name's Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading, and today I have my July wrap up. In July, I ended up reading 18 books, and there was a very large range of ratings this month. I had probably my worst book of the year, at least my worst book so far this year, and I had some books that I really loved as well. So let's dive in and see what I read in July. I'm going to keep my thoughts kind of small and concise, so this video isn't super long, but let's dive in. Let's start with our 1-star ratings. This is the first book this year I have given a 1-star rating to, because normally I DNF 1-star books. I don't usually get to the point where I would rate them. However, this was for a video and I really wanted to give my full review in the video. So I wanted to read the whole book, because sometimes if you DNF, people will say, because you didn't finish it, your thoughts are not necessarily as valid. And I wanted to be able to give my full opinion on this book as I was reading it, because I had strong opinions. And that book was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. Again, I have a whole video on this. It's my Snapchat AI chooses my reads, so I'm not going to go fully in depth into my thoughts about this book. But my main problem with this book was the violence towards women in this book. The way it was dealt with in the book made me extremely uncomfortable. It really felt like it was sensationalizing violence against women, and it was not needed to be as graphic as it was to still have the plot of the book make sense. I didn't like how it was handled. I didn't appreciate how it was written. There was also some offensive terms in this book, and I do realize it's translated, but I could not get past a lot of the things in this book to enjoy the actual plot of the book. And in the long and short of it, I ended up giving it 1 star. I did own the rest of the series and have unhauled it at this point, and I will be unhauling this once I'm done this wrap up. I've only kept it so that I would have it for the wrap up. I had 2 reads this month, and that was Your Dad Will Do by Katie Roberts. This is a very short, smutty novella by Katie Roberts where it follows a woman, and do not ask me to remember this character's name because I do not. A woman finds her boyfriend cheating on her and immediately goes to his father's house, because there's always been some sexual tension with the father, and basically seduces him, and they have a smutty weekend together. I did not love this. It was fine. I read it because a ton of people that I know on BookTube was reading it. It was a book, and to be honest, I forgot that I read it until I was looking at my stats to make this video. So it obviously did not make much of an impression. My other 2-star read this month was the first book in the Zodiac Academy, Zodiac Academy: The Awakening. I know this is a much loved series here on BookTube. And I also know that a lot of people who even love the series say you have to power through the first couple of books because they aren't fantastic. And I did not enjoy my time with this book. I did not enjoy it at all. I really did not like any of the characters. And I think my problem with it was that I don't think I like a bully romance. I have never read a bully romance until this moment. And I just think that's something that I personally cannot get behind. It felt very kindergarten-y to me in a way where it's like, oh, the boy likes you if he pulls your hair. And that just wasn't something that I had a good time with. And this is a bully romance. So right from the get-go, I think I've realized from reading Zodiac Academy that that is just not a trope that works for me. I know it works for a lot of people, and that's wonderful. But for me, this ended up being a 2-star read. And really, that was the reasoning for me, was the whole bully romance thing didn't work. Also, the writing was not great, but I knew that going into it. Anyway, 2 stars. Next up is my 3-star reads. I ended up having 8 3-star reads this month, so let's dive into those. The first one was The Paris Daughter by Kristen Harmel. This is a World War II historical fiction that follows 2 women, Juliet and Elise. Juliet runs a bookshop in Paris, and now the Germans are entering Paris. Elise and her have had daughters basically about a week apart. So they bond over their children and their motherhood journey together. Elise's husband is kind of a part of the people pushing back against the German army and are speaking out against them. So he gets arrested. He is ended up killed by the Germans, and Elise has to go into hiding because the Germans are after his entire family now. Elise wants to protect her daughter and leaves her daughter with Juliet. We fast forward to the war being over, and now Elise is coming back to France and wants to find her daughter and Juliet. And when she returns, the bookshop is complete rubble and she has no idea where Juliet and her daughter are. And from there, we follow the different timelines and stories to find out where Juliet and Elise's daughter have gone. This was a pretty good historical fiction, except it was very predictable. I did not find that it really did anything different with a World War II historical fiction. And since there are so many World War II historical fictions, I'm kind of looking for something that's going to captivate my attention. And like I said, this was pretty obvious of what was going to happen. But I do love Kristen Harmel's writing, so I did like that. We also have glimpses into past Kristen Harmel books and see characters from previous books, such as the Book of Lost Names. And I loved seeing the connections between the books. But at the end of the day, it was just a bit too predictable with how the story kind of came together. I also read Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey this month. This is the second book in the Hot and Hammered series. I also read the first book, but we'll get to that later. This book follows Rosie and Dominic. We do meet Rosie and Dominic slightly in the first book, and this is the second chance romance, marriage on the rocks situation. Rosie, in the first book, we know that they are having trouble in their marriage. In the first chapter, Rosie comes home from work and leaves Dominic. And Dominic is actually quite surprised. Rosie was very aware that there were problems, but apparently Dominic was not as aware. So he's kind of stunned that his wife has left him. They go to marriage counseling and start working on their issues, and we see them kind of go through that process. For me, the reason this only got 3 stars was I don't think Marriage on the Rocks is a trope that I particularly love. So I kind of knew going into this that I wasn't going to love it as much, but I wanted to read the series in order. So I ended up reading this so that I could read the third book. So I kind of knew right from the get-go that because this was a Marriage on the Rocks book, this was not necessarily going to be my favorite. I also really did not like Dominic. And in a contemporary romance, if you don't like the male lead character, it kind of puts a damper on the book. And he just rubbed me the wrong way the whole way through. Rosie kept wanting to show that she had grown in her life and she wanted to start her own business and she wants to be an independent woman, still be in her marriage, but wants to be more respected in her relationship. And I don't even feel like in the very end of this book, Dominic was respecting Rosie in that way. And for me, it just fell flat because Dominic was just not a male character that I could really enjoy. And like I said, in a contemporary romance, you kind of have to like the characters since the entire plot is their romance. I also read The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. This one, I'm so sad, only got a 3-star because I loved the guest list. And this is very similar to the guest list in a lot of ways. It's a small group of people who go away on vacation together. They've known each other for a very long time. They go to this secluded hunting cabin, and we know someone has died pretty much right from the beginning because we're of 2 timelines, but we don't know who died or who did it until basically the last 50 pages. It's very much a classic whodunit story, and I did enjoy it, but for me, it fell a little flat with the atmosphere and the character work. I did not care about these characters as much as I cared about the characters in the guest list, and I just felt this story kind of fell a bit more flat for me than the guest list did. I absolutely love The Guest List by Lucy Foley. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I loved that classic whodunit, and I did enjoy my time with this, but it just didn't quite hit the same way. Also, I felt like there was a few twists and turns in this book that didn't necessarily make as much sense and were just there to send the reader off in the wrong direction. And I'm fine for a good red herring, but in this case, there was a couple of times where like they honestly didn't really make as much sense as they maybe should have. And that's how I got to my 3-star rating for The Hunting Party. Then I read Begin Again by Emma Lord. This is a YA contemporary romance following Andy. Andy goes to college, and she is going to college in the same university that her mother went to. Her mother has passed away, and Andy is going to this university to kind of reconnect with her mother. Her mother, when she went to university, started a secret underground radio station called The Knights, and Andy wants to start working for the Knights and ends up doing that in this book as kind of an assistant called the Squire. Andy is also in a long-term relationship with her boyfriend, and we see kind of the struggles of Andy kind of coming to terms with, is that working for her? And also, as she's growing up and changing and coming into her own, does that relationship still fit what she wants from life? We also see her making new friends with the current knight Milo and her roommates and people that she meets. And we see a budding relationship between her and the knight. So it's a little bit of a coming of age story with a romance subplot. And I did really enjoy this book. My only issue with it was that at the end, it did kind of rush the relationship. At the very end, it really all came together in very small amount of time, and it just felt a little insta-lovey to me. But other than that, I did really enjoy this book. I think the reason it got a 3-star was, again, the insta-lovey situation, as well as I'm starting to not enjoy YA romance as much as maybe I did in the past. But I still had a pretty good time with this book, and I'm glad I did end up picking it up. The Atlas Paradox is the sequel to the Atlas 6, and unfortunately, I felt like this book had huge middle book syndrome. I have high hopes for the next book in the series because I'm hoping this is just a bridge book to bridge one book to the other, but really not much happened in this book. Not much happened in this book. And the only good thing that I felt like did happen in this book is my 2 characters that I have been shipping since almost the first 50 pages of the Atlas 6 did get together, but I mean, they got together with 2 pages left in the book. So I need more of that, and I'm hoping for more of that in the last book. So I gave this a 3-star in the hopes that it is just middle book syndrome. It's not anything bad about the series, but that I have very high hopes that this is necessary in the grand scheme of things for the 3rd book to happen, because sometimes that is the case with middle books, is you do need all that information. The middle book in and of itself is not excellent, but it's needed to be a bridge between 2 books. You need it because you need all the contextual information. And I'm hoping that's the case with the Atlas Paradox. And when I sit back after reading the Atlas Complex, I will say, yes, this book is definitely just a middle book, but it is necessary to the series as a whole. I can't say that yet without reading the Atlas Complex, but I'm going and assuming that to be the case. She's got some middle book syndrome. I also read The Adventures of Amina AlSarafi this month by Shannon Chakraborty, and I really liked the idea of this book. The idea of this strong female pirate who has legends about her and is doing amazing things, but is also a mother and trying to protect her child. And I loved the idea of this book. And I really enjoyed the first 50% of this book when the story was being set up. We see Amina. Amina, like I said, is this strong female pirate, but is in retirement and is raising her daughter. She comes out of retirement because someone blackmails her into finding their missing granddaughter. Amina no longer has their ship, no longer has their crew. She gifted her ship to somebody else. So Amina needs to go out and get her ship, bring her crew back together, and start off this adventure. And I loved finding out all about that. I was really intrigued seeing Amina kind of bring her crew back together, hearing about Amina's past. This book is written from basically a scribe's perspective. So there are times in this book where Amina and the scribe kind of have a back and forth conversation of, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And I really liked that part of the book. However, at 50%, this book kind of takes a turn into a different situation. Amina gets separated from her crew, and I felt like the second half of this book is slightly disjointed from the first half. We spent all this time getting to know these characters, and then they're just gone. And I wanted more of those characters, and I missed them. I'm hoping that as the series goes on, we see more of those characters, and I maybe like the other books a little bit better. But for me, the second half of this book felt a little disjointed from the first half. However, I enjoyed the writing style, I enjoyed the idea of the book, and I enjoyed the first 50%, and I want to know more about Amina's daughter, about her life, about her upcoming adventures. I'm still very intrigued. So just because this book wasn't a super high rating for me and it only got a 3-star does not mean I'm not intrigued to continue and see what is next for Amina. Every second month, I read a Planet Barbarians live here on the internet with all of you and Leandra from the TBR Zero. And this month, I read Barbarians Touch by Ruby Dixon. This is the 7th book in the Planet Barbarians series, and this one came out as a 3-star and is kind of in the middle of my ranking system for Planet Barbarians. I have ones that I've liked less, and I have ones that I've liked significantly more. So this one's just kind of come out in the middle. I have explained Planet Barbarians on this channel so many times that I'm not going to bother, but obviously I love the series and I love my time reading them with everyone. And I'm excited to continue in September with book 8. The B&K book club this month was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I think I am in the minority on this one. I gave this 3 stars. I think everyone else gave it 5 or 4 stars. I did not care. And that's really my whole review of this book. There was nothing really wrong with this book at all. I have actually very little thoughts on this book. I just did not care. I did not care about the characters. I did not care about the plot. I did not care. And I know I'm in the minority on that, so it is probably a me thing and not a book thing, but it just didn't grip me. It didn't captivate me. But like I said, everyone else in the book club did, so I'm pretty sure it's a me thing. This follows Avery. Avery is a high school student down on their luck and is living with their sister, and kind of in her car at the beginning of this book, like down on their luck, when all of a sudden she gets visited by a lawyer who says, you need to come to this will reading for Tobias Hawthorne. He has left you something. And Tobias Hawthorne is a billionaire and has a pretty large family that is expecting to receive his inheritance, but he leaves pretty much everything to Avery. And in this book, we're trying to figure out why. Why? The 4 grandsons of Tobias Hawthorne are all about Avery's age, plus or minus a few years. And we see them kind of become friends, enemies, frenemies. We see somewhat of a love triangle going on. And there is some things happening, but like I said, it just didn't really captivate me. But I know, again, I'm in the minority. We have made it to my 4-star reads, and my first 4-star read was The Bodyguard by Catherine Senner. This was such a fun romance. I had a fantastic time with it. It read so quickly. This is closed door, so don't go into this expecting it to be smutty because it's just not really Catherine Senner style, but it is such a fun time. This book follows Hannah. Hannah is a bodyguard for a private bodyguard agency. She's pretty good at her job. She is like one of the top bodyguards in this agency. She gets paired up with Jack. Jack needs to go home to his family's hometown and his family's ranch because his mother is getting some cancer surgery and he wants to be there with his mother. He has a stalker situation, so he needs somebody to kind of make sure that he doesn't get attacked by a stalker. So his publicist hires Hannah and her agency. However, Jack does not want to add stress to his mother's condition, so he says, my family can't know who you actually are, and we are going to just pretend to be dating. So this is a fake dating romance. This is kind of the second book of Catherine Senner's that kind of flip-flops the female into a normally male dominating industry. Bodyguards, you think of men. And also Things You Save in a Fire, our main character Cassie is a firefighter, which again, you kind of think of that as a male dominated industry. And I love that Catherine Center keeps tackling these male dominated industries and writing these amazing female characters who are serving it and taking names and just rocking it. I am pretty sure that everyone will be shocked when I say that I gave 4 stars to Cupcakes for My Orc Neighbor, because I did not expect to. I will tell you that right now. This is the second in the series. The besties read this live on the internet for my BookTube birthday. We read the first book together also a while back. I don't remember why, but we did. And the first book was horrible. It was horrible. We had a fun time reading it together. The vibes of that live show are top tier, but the book was legitimately horrible. The second in the series is written by a different author, and I really attribute that to this 4-star rating. This was just written better, and it was written much more like a rom-com. The first one was weird. This one was just like a contemporary rom-com, but your main character is an orc. But the city is this like really magical small town. Even in the live show, I think it was Crystal that said it gave off really strong Star Hollow vibes from the Gilmore Girls. Like, it's this fantastic, tiny, little small town, but it's magical. There's fairies, there's orcs, there's werewolves and vampires. There's every little magical creature you could ever think of. And there's also humans. And our main character moves to town and she sets up a coffee place next to a bakery. And the bakery's owner is an orc. I would not say this is an enemies to lovers, even though the title kind of leans it towards that. It is definitely more of a Grumpy Sunshine situation. If you love a small town romance with some smut, you'll probably actually really like this. I had a really good time reading it. I also gave 4 stars this month to Liza, Clamora by Scott Lynch. This book follows Clamora and the Gentleman Bastards. Clamora was an orphaned child when he was bought into a thief organization by someone called the Thief Maker. Clamora is kind of advanced for a child thief and ends up getting into a lot of trouble because his schemes are so in depth and so over the top. So the Thief Maker is like, I can't deal with this child. He's going to get me in trouble. So I'm going to sell him to someone called Chains, who pretends to be a priest for money. And Chains gathers these 5 orphans and creates the Gentleman Bastards. Fast forward to the present, the Gentleman Bastards are adults now, and Clamora is a master of disguise, and he is pulling off heists with these 4 other gentlemen. And I loved this book once I got used to it. The first 30% was rough and I almost DNF'd the book, but I actually really enjoyed it after that once I got used to the style and the writing and what was going on in this world. It just took a minute to really get settled into it, so keep that in mind if you're going to be picking this up. I think it's hard to make thieves lovable because they are so morally gray, but I ended up falling in love with the Sansa twins, with Jean, with Bug, with Clamora, and I just love this group, and I can't wait to see what adventures come in the next few books. I also read The Rain Watcher this month by Tatiana de Rosnay, and this ended up also getting a 4-star rating. This is a historical fiction that follows the Melgard family. They have all returned from various places around the world, the United States, other places in Europe, to come home for their father Paul's 80th birthday. They arrive in Paris, and all of a sudden there is torrential rains happening in Paris, and the Seine starts to overflow and flood Paris. And we watch this family as they struggle through some personal issues while they are all together, as well as this whole flooding Paris situation. This was a really interesting historical fiction. I really liked the way the author wrote the story and the interpersonal connections that we follow throughout this book and how intricate family connections can be. It is a really deep look into how family and how history can affect the present. And it definitely makes me want to pick up more by this author. Okay, we have made it to the best of the best and my 3 5-stars for July. The first one is the first book in the Hot and Hammered series, which is Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. The second book only got a 3-star, but this first book, I loved it. I absolutely loved this first book. This is up there as one of my favorite Tessa Bailey books. I had a fantastic time with it. This is a best friends, little sisters, friends to lovers romance, if that makes any sense. So Travis went into professional baseball, but has now been injured and has now been sent out to pasture. And he is now back in his small town where he grew up. He is in a funk because he's lost his career that he worked really hard for, makes sense. And his best friend, Steven, is trying to get him out of his funk, but it's not working. So Steven's little sister, Georgie, gives it a try. Georgie has always had a crush on Travis and is now starting to become friends with Travis now that he's back home. However, Georgie's family always kind of sees her as the little kid. They don't really take her seriously, and she wants to be taken seriously. Travis has always been seen like a player and is now trying to get a job as a network announcer, but for a family station. So he needs to start looking like a respectable family man. So these two decide to start fake dating, and fake dating doesn't last very long. Let's just be honest with this couple. It's Tessa Bailey, so as you can expect, it is quite spicy. But like I said, it's probably going to come out as one of my favorite Tessa Bailey books. I really loved this couple. So Happy for You by Celia Lasky is a wedding thriller. Robin is asked by her best friend Ellie to be her maid of honor. However, Robin does not believe in weddings and marriage. Robin is a feminist and just does not agree with the whole marriage situation, but does agree to be Ellie's maid of honor because she loves Ellie. And this book really dives in and has a fantastic look into the constructs of marriage and where the traditions of marriage have come from and what of them are oppressive to women and why they are the way they are. And I had a fantastic time with this book. I read this book all in one night. It was so fast. Then around the 50% mark, we start seeing this book get twisty. We kind of leave that whole look into the construct of marriage and start kind of seeing how Ellie has lost her marbles as a bridezilla and is doing things well over the top to make sure her wedding is perfect. And it starts getting twistier and twistier and twistier. This was a fun time. Like I said, read it all in one night. And I don't remember the last book that I devoured that quickly. This read so fast. And just for that reason alone, and also just the whole look into marriage and weddings, and also if you choose to get married, what that all looks like and what women's choices are. It was so interesting, and to put it with a thriller and a twist at the end, absolutely recommend. And the last book that I have given 5 stars to this month was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I ended up getting an arc of this book through NetGalley, and I adore this book. I adore this book. Alex and Josie meet on their birthday and find out that they are birthday twins. They were born in the same hospital on the same day in the same year. And Josie has had what anyone would consider a traumatizing life, and goes up to Alex. Alex is a podcaster and says, I think you need to do a podcast on my life. And we see the trauma Josie has gone through, but we also see that in the present, there are some things happening in Josie's life that just don't sit right. And the whole time in this book, you are like, what is happening? What is true? I don't know what's going on. It really leans onto an unreliable narrator for a lot of this book. And I had a great time with it. The whole time I was like, what is happening? What is going on? I don't know. This is by far my favorite Lisa Jewell book. I think Lisa Jewell outdid themselves with this book. However, I do want to preface, please check trigger warnings before you pick up this book. This is dark. It's dark for a Lisa Jewell book, so I want that kind of stated because if you're used to reading Lisa Jewell, you're not going to be used to this level of situation. This is a podcasty book, so I do plan on re-listening to this on audio because I loved it so much, and I know that the podcast episodes are done in the audiobook. So since I didn't get the ALC, I want to listen to this with that. But I did want to put that in mind. A lot of people are comparing this to Verity, and the plot is different, obviously, but I can see why it's getting that comparison because for content, it's different dark content, but for content, it's about of equal level. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be picking this up, please check the trigger warnings. But I did really like this book and ended up giving it 5 stars. We have made it to the end of all the books that I read in July. Please let me know what your favorite book of July was down in the comments. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.